Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. As I watch the first 3 episodes of the second season of Andor, the story arc that stressed me out the most wasn't the Imperials plotting the downfall of the Gorman. It wasn't Dedra dealing with her mother-in-law. It wasn't even Andor stealing that ship and running into those rebel wannabes. No, the story arc that had by far the most tension and uncertainty in it was the wedding and Mon Mothma's estate. You see, most characters in Andor have gone through their baking process already and have emerged on the other side as ideologically hardened individuals prepared for the coming war. Cassian, the Ferrix group, Luthen Rael, Dedra, and Cyril, these individuals are already fully committed to their cause. But Mon Mothma, well, all last season, the tension has been building as the Imperial hounds get closer and closer. The walls are closing in, but Mon Mothma has not really made the plunge into the flowing current of open rebellion. She is still hiding somewhat. In her guide along the way, her ferryman is none other than Luthen Rael. And the truth is, she's going to need him. She's going to need him to drag her kicking and screaming into the hellish landscapes that he already exists in. This is the rebellion. There are many stages of a rebellion, and as one of the leaders in one of these movements, you have to understand which stage your current rebellion is in. To think of Luthen Rael just as a spy master is a simplistic view. He's more of an architect. While Bail Organa raises resources for the future rebellion, like the conventional force that will fight the Empire, Luthen Rael is looking for leaders and people for important positions. He also really maintains kind of like this decentralized network of small little insurgency groups that alone aren't really anything, but together, because of that connection with him, forms the early backbone or skeleton of the rebellion. Because of security reasons, the rebellion maintains this decentralized structure that purposely is compartmentalized so that if one group does go down, the rest are able to continue fighting. This makes sense at this stage of the rebellion where you have very limited popular support, very small amounts of manpower and resources at your disposal. What the rebellion really needs, at least in the first season of Andor, was a spy master, someone to gather intel and create an actual plan and also organize potentially multiple units in a joint strike. And so Luthen Rael kind of fit into that mold very well. And as a spy master, Luthen Rael wasn't just interested in collecting intel, figuring out where the Empire's weaknesses are.
And where are you stationed? I've been training on Steergard, but we're all being transferred now. Really? Where's everyone going?
I love that scene. Luthen Rael is also trying to create a foundation for the movement. Luthen Rael was also looking for special individuals, important figures like Cassian and Andor, who have a huge role to play in important moments of the rebellion's growth and evolution. Luthen Rael is collecting all of this intel, all of this talent to basically move the rebellion to the next stage, a more open rebellion. This is why Luthen Rael should be categorized as an accelerationist. Accelerationists are found in the most extreme political movements on both the left and the right. They're oftentimes also aligned with revolutionary and reactionary ideologies. All of them seek to dismantle the current power structure that exists and is governing, whatever planet or country or galaxy they're in. And in my opinion, accelerationists are amongst some of the most dangerous people in any kind of political movement. In the United States, just recently, a neo-Nazi killed his parents and then was on his way to assassinate President Trump in an attempt to start a race war. Thank God that didn't happen. Our law enforcement did their job. Actually, there have been multiple attempts by neo-Nazis, white supremacists, to start a race war since Trump has come into office. So this is why I always urge restraint. These are some scary times we're living through. One of the most successful accelerationists, one of the biggest scumbags in recent history was Osama bin Laden, the architect behind 9/11. He rage-baited our entire country to spend trillions of dollars in Iraq and Afghanistan, killing tens of thousands of our young folk we sent over there and close to 1 million people in the Middle East. Osama wanted to destroy the United States, and arguably he succeeded in making us weaker. We also expanded the size of our government to a huge size. We put security in all of our airports and our subway systems. And yes, it's meant to protect us, but we've also created a surveillance state for our own people. And for almost 2 decades, while we were pumping money into fighting wars that had no real benefit for the American taxpayer, China was pumping money into their own infrastructure, which is one of the main reasons why we're so behind and why we're in this economic situation we're in right now. Osama bin Laden also lost. I mean, he got to meet our very elite aquatic marine specialist in his home in Pakistan. And obviously the Arabs and Muslims he supposedly was doing this for, they suffered a lot, as we mentioned. A million deaths in the Middle East from our wars. It's absolutely insane. This is the risk you take as an accelerationist, and throughout our history, the people who have taken this step were usually pretty extreme and more than willing to take autonomy from others by getting them involved in horrific acts of violence and conflict. Which, of course, is just my way of looking at it. I'm very, I think, biased about this. Others will say that in certain times, such actions are necessary, and I probably agree, only if there's actually a plan to rebuild things. Right? That's the big if. And yes, Luthen Rael is very much a contemporary and a colleague of Osama bin Laden, as in they serve the same purpose. Obviously, the battles they fight are very different, because the one thing that sets Luthen Rael apart from individuals like Osama is how they accelerate, and that is very important. Osama bin Laden indiscriminately killed 3,000 people. Most of them were civilians. A bunch of them were actually Muslims, American Muslims. My father watched both of the planes hit the towers from the Pulaski Skyway, and my uncle's car was destroyed downtown. Dozens of people in my hometown died from this. And I remembered what happened in America. We all went fucking crazy. I went crazy. I was like 11 or 12, and I wanted to kill people because of what had happened, to our beautiful city. And this was the result of bin Laden's actions. This is what he wanted. He wanted us to overreact. Luthen Rael, on the other hand, orchestrated an attack on an imperial depository. Only a handful of soldiers, not innocent civilians, were killed. His ultimate goal was to reveal the Empire's true nature.
The Empire has been choking us so slowly, we're starting not to notice.
But here's the thing, even if the Aldhani heist doesn't target innocent people, the Imperial reaction will, as will the Galactic Civil War. I mean, a lot of innocent people will die because of this, and Luthen Rael, he has to be okay with this.
The time has come to force their hand.
People will suffer.
That's the plan.
This is what happens when an idealist walks into the shop of a realist. Their startling differences in methods and behavior can be jarring, but if a cause is just enough for them to share, and they can work together, I mean, that is a powerful partnership. Two extremes come into one to serve one objective. Luthen Rael, in my opinion, is the only acceptable type of accelerationist because he doesn't take lightly the death and destruction that he's about to create. He is clearly a moral being, and every time he kills, cheats, lies, it becomes harder for him to recognize himself in the mirror.
I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight. They set me on a path from which there's no escape.
No one has ever walked that line so finely, and maybe only a fictional character can. It's one thing to be a good moral person and sacrifice yourself to save others. It's a completely different thing to be a good person and turn yourself into a monster to awaken other people to the disaster that is hanging over their heads that they don't notice.
I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude.
Luthen Rael understands very clearly that he is a dead man. He has no future. His hands will be so covered in blood that by the time Luke Skywalker jumps into Red 5 and flies towards the Death Star, he will be vilified and hated by a lot of people in the galaxy. He will be a pariah, a political liability, and he accepts this. No one sacrifices more than him because of this. But the other reason why I accept his reason for being an accelerationist is he has a plan to replace the Empire. All of this chaos is pointing towards, hopefully, a better tomorrow. This isn't just chaos for the sake of chaos, violence for the sake of violence. Most accelerationists just want to see the world burn. Luthen Rael has a plan, has an ace up his sleeve. Luthen understands that once the Aldhani heist happens, his role will be begin to diminish in the rebellion. Ideally, he can fall back into the shadows completely, bring his crimes with him into the darkness. But before that happens, he has to find a leader. Now, Luthen Rael has connections with several factions within the rebellion. You have groups like Saw Gerrera's Partisans, Maya Pei's Brigade, Anton Krieger, but these are really just foot soldiers and captains in a grander scheme of things. Luthen Rael sees how chaotic and how unorganized these groups are. He understands that for the rebellion to succeed, they need to scale up, establish real structure and a chain of command. What they also really need is a real leader, an ideological figure who can create a legitimate political opposition to the empire, an alternative that people can actually look to join. This is where Mon Mothma comes into play. I mean, generally most rebellions need a figure like her when they overthrow a government. Usually, it's some figure from a past political regime or party. Mon Mothma fits that description. She's been in the Imperial Senate since the beginning, and she also served in the Republic, so that brings with her a lot of legitimacy. She also has political experience. She has successfully run a resistance campaign against Palpatine in the Imperial Senate. She's basically the only one brave enough to do this, and up until the moment she flees from Coruscant, she actually still believed in a political solution to the problems the galaxy faces. Some might call her naive and stupid. I see a person who's not willing to take shortcuts, who really believes in a political system, which means that she'd probably be really good at building a political system and protecting it. Mon Mothma has principles, and she sticks with them. And I think that's what really attracts Luthen Rael to her. She also has a very solid ideological core. Her belief in pacifism and political norms and using all legal methods before rebelling. Of course, you won't tell that to her face, but you can see some glances here and there how much Luthen actually really respects Mon. At the moment, these two seem opposed to one another, but in reality, deep down inside, Luthen Rael once held views just like Mon Mothma. I think at one point in time he was probably like a theater artist or something, some very ideological, open-minded, bleeding heart liberal. Save one person and you save the galaxy. They believe in the sanctity of life and how important it is. But only Mon Mothma now remains untarnished enough to preserve it. Luthen Rael unfortunately never had the luxury of Mon Mothma. He started in the rebellion a bit too early, and he'll suffer for it. Luthen Rael has seen what happens to a rebel movement that is not guided by defined goals and ideology.
I am the only one with clarity of purpose.
Well, anarchy is a seductive concept. A bit of a luxury, I'd argue, to a man who's hiding in cold caves.
Luthen Rael can use groups like the Partisans, like Anton Krieger's group, like Maya Pei's Brigade, but he'll never bet everything on such chaos, right? These are actually just disposable assets, even though he cares about them somewhat.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah!
I know a lot of people probably didn't like this scene. They're like, oh, they're dumbing down Andor, right? With this stupid rock, paper, scissors, shoot kind of stuff. But look, as someone who's documented a lot of protests, a lot of resistance, revolutionary movements. I used to be a videographer. In a lot of these movements, people act exactly like this. There are a lot of idiots. I mean, I don't want to that's harsh. It's harsh. But there are a lot of people who are they're LARPing, basically. They're romanticizing and playing a role without actually necessarily needing to be in that position. This is especially true with protesters in the United States in recent times. And, our media and our education system tends to romanticize rebellions. I mean, this is why I like Andor so much. It doesn't do that. It makes rebellions look terrible because they usually are. And I understand why us Americans, we really like the idea of revolution because this country was founded by one of the most successful revolutions of all time. There obviously are also good causes. There's a lot of peaceful protests, which I always support. Go out there, even if it's a cause I don't like, as long as you're peaceful. Yeah, go out there and be heard. But then you have mobs of idiots, attacking the U.S. Capitol, thinking they're saving America. You have looters during the Black Lives Matter protest burning fucking dumpsters in front of my office in New York. The truth is when you actually walk amongst resistance fighters and revolutionaries who have seen their friends die already or been imprisoned, or you see these kind of people have no other choice but to rebel, the vibe is very different. Like all the Ukrainian civilians who are now fighting a total war against Russia. There's no like cosplaying of these guys. There's no one pretending to be a hero or something that they're not. I also saw a similar determination and seriousness amongst the pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong who were trying to resist mainland China because their future was about to change forever. I mean, maybe we're getting close to that moment in the United States. I hope not. I hope the institutions and checks and balances hold. Anyway, what Luthen Rael needs is legitimacy. A figure that will not only attract only radicals, but also the masses, the average working class individual. Someone that Brasso, rest in peace, could work with and follow and be inspired by. What they needed was someone with Mon Mothma's political skills, leadership abilities, and most importantly, her intact ideology. Her goodness, her belief in peace and individual liberty, a stark contrast to what Palpatine's empire is offering. Again, they can't just continue to attack the empire from the shadows. They have to provide a legitimate alternative. Luthen Rael chooses to take a pacifist and turn her into a wartime leader rather than take a militant partisan and turn him into a statesman because he knows that when the Empire strikes back hard, the militant partisan will take the bait and try to strike back harder and get destroyed because that's the reality of the rebellion's capabilities. Whereas the pacifist is more likely to pull back, preserve, wait, and think. Maybe that's also a female versus male thing. Don't you dare tell my wife I said that. Okay, I will hunt you down. And this is a step that Mon Mothma must take herself. And while she's no stranger to putting herself at risk.
Don't lecture me on vulnerability. No one's more at risk than I am. You think I haven't thought this through? I'd be the first one to fall.
She's not dodging blaster rounds, she's dodging Imperial spies, audits, and all sorts of other crazy things. The danger is definitely real, and unlike a blaster fight, it's continuous. There's never any catharsis, it never stops, right? It's always lingering there. At least in a blaster fight, it eventually comes to an end quickly. For Mon Mothma to fully take on the reins of the rebellion, she doesn't need to learn how to sacrifice herself. She is willing, she needs to learn how to sacrifice others. And for a pacifist, that obviously is going to be extremely, extremely difficult. Which is why Tacoma, a tragic and probably decent man, must die. We could talk about his specific situation more and whether this is fair or not, but the truth is, Mon Mothma needed to go through something like this eventually to lead a rebellion. She's been protected for too long, enjoyed the luxury and comfort that her position affords to her. She needs to be willing to get her hands truly dirty. One day, many pilots will die rescuing Mon Mothma from the capital. She has to be okay with that. One day, an entire army of people are going to die on Scarif trying to get the Death Star plans. One day, the entire planet of Alderaan will be destroyed because she rebelled against the Empire. And she'll have to be okay with that, and it'll be difficult because the further you have to travel from your moral foundations, the more you're at risk of losing your sense of self. And that is perhaps why Luthen Rael chooses Mon Mothma. He believes in her goodness, in her clarity. He knows she will be wise and cautious once he puts the rebellion that he has created into her guiding hands. But first, he has to help her take that plunge. And I won't be surprised if on the day that Mon Mothma leaves Coruscant after the Gorman massacre, that is also the day that Luthen Rael ceases to exist. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome coverage of Andor. As usual, my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.